Hey folks, I know I am just an old guy telling stories, but please leave a like and subscribe before we start. Let's enjoy in today's stories. I got paid $20,000 to test a video game, and now everything I love is dead. My buddy Steve was a genius at making money without doing anything. At one point, he was enrolled in 12 different clinical trials at the same time. Some of these were for drugs that would have had bad interactions, but it didn't matter to Steve, because he never actually took the drugs. He did it like they do in the movies and just slipped them under his tongue and then spat them into his hand when the doc was turned away. Other trials were for new therapeutic approaches and things like that, but those were no problem for Steve either. At most, he had to lie, literally and metaphorically, on somebody's couch for an hour each week, then collect his check on the way out. But eventually they caught on, and Steve was put on some kind of list. There was a nationwide ban on Steve, so that he couldn't participate in any more trials sponsored by universities or private drug companies, which essentially precluded him from that easy money. But Steve found a workaround. Not all experiments are above board and sanctioned by the FDA or whatever. There is, in fact, a hidden world of people testing things out in their garages, streamlining the whole process without having to worry about pesky and expensive regulations. One of Steve's friends gave him a link to a forum on the dark web, and after that, he was in the pipeline. The thing about these experiments is that if it were for, say, a new drug, they didn't trust you to just swallow the pill. You had to open your mouth and lift your tongue. You had to actually take the thing, because these people weren't joking around. But boy, did they pay. One morning I was awakened by an insanely loud banging at my apartment door. "Who's that?" moaned my girlfriend Sophia. I looked at the clock with bleary eyes. It was 5:55 a.m. "Open up, dude," shouted Steve from the hallway. "Oh, screw him," said Sophia. "He could be in trouble," I said, shooting out of bed, full of adrenaline. I answered the door in my boxers, and there was Steve, bouncing up and down, his pupils each the size of the full moon. "Are you okay?" I asked. "I'm awesome," said Steve. "Holy shit, dude. This stuff, they gave me $1,000 to take one fucking pill, and it rules so much. It feels so good. Oh my God, Jay. Oh my God." My head hurt as I tried to piece together a thought. "So you're high? And you came to tell me that you got paid a lot of money to get high?" I felt a surge of rage welling up deep inside of me. "Ha! Yes. I mean, no. Look, man, you're my best friend. I love you. I love you so much. I want to... No, listen, I came here because, look. There's money. A lot of money. For me and for you. $20,000 for a video game. To play a video game or something, dude. 20 grand to play a video game for a few hours. Look, I'm just telling you this because I love you. You don't need to take drugs or anything. Just do some virtual reality stuff for a few hours, and boom, 20 grand in your pocket like that." The flood of rage died down as I tried to make sense of what Steve was saying. I couldn't. "What are you saying?" I asked. "Why are you here before the crack of dawn? Sophia's pissed, and so am I, really." No, said Steve, with a horrified look on his face. "No, I want you to be happy. Sophia, too. Look. You still have that Tor browser I set you up with and all that?" I guess so." Good. Listen. Look." Steve jammed his hand in his pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. "Look. Just type this in, and you'll see. Easy money, okay? $20,000. You can finally buy that engagement ring you've been..." I reached out and smacked Steve across the side of the head. "Jesus Christ, dude, keep it down, yeah?" Steve looked shocked and hurt for a moment before the realization dawned on him. "Oh, shit. My bad. I'm sorry, dude. I'm sorry. I wish I could delete it. Listen, are you going to check this out, or what?" He held out the crumpled piece of paper to me. I took it and shrugged. "I'll check it out, Steve. But that's it for now. Why don't you head home and sleep this one off, huh?" "Yes. said Steve, nodding his head like crazy. Yes, check it out. I'll sleep it off. I started to close the door, but he stuck his foot in just before it closed. Dude? Yeah? Can I use your bathroom? I opened the door inside as he rushed into the bathroom and started puking his guts out. Steve received a ban from our apartment after that, but we stayed in touch. He would text me every few hours, asking if I'd checked out the advertisement for the video game trial yet. The truth was that I had checked it out as soon as he left that morning, but I was undecided. On the one hand, the $20,000 sure was intriguing. That was almost half again as much as I made in a year, more than half, after taxes. And I had a feeling that this wasn't the sort of gig where they took taxes out. I'd be able to do a lot with the money. Take Sophia out for all kinds of dinners, maybe take a vacation and travel somewhere interesting. The kinds of things we always wanted to do but never could afford to do. Then, too, yes, there was that engagement ring. Sophia would say yes either way, even if I presented her with some rolled-up aluminum foil. But I wanted it to be special. I wanted it to be special, but I couldn't afford to make it special. On the other hand, well, the whole thing was sketchy as fuck. Who pays some Joe off the street $20K to test out a video game? And why go through such shady channels to set the thing up? I knew from the start that nothing good could come from it. I knew that, but I did it anyway. All right, I wrote in a text to Steve. I'm in for the video game thing. My man, we're gonna be swimming in fucking caviar, my dude. Steve and I drove to the address together. It was, strangely, a respectable-looking office building. We went up to the entrance and looked at the map of the building. There was a lawyer in there, a counselor, an accountant, and so forth. Shit, said Steve. Which fucking office is it? On cue, his phone buzzed. Oh, he said. The basement. The basement? I asked. Not for real. The basement. I don't know about this, man. Come on, dude. $20,000. And in such a nice building, too. I'm used to going to crazy people's garages and swallowing God knows what. This is going to be cake. I nodded, but as we walked to the elevator, my sense of unease grew larger and larger until it was screaming at me. Turn around. Whatever this is, it's bad. It's just a video game, I muttered. What's that? Asked Steve. I snapped out of it. I said, let's go play this dumb video game and get paid. That's the attitude, said Steve, grinning, as the elevator door slid closed behind me. We rode down to the basement as I tried to calm myself down. It's a video game in the basement of a respectable office. Probably. They could only afford to rent the basement. I shut myself up before I could ask. They could only afford to rent the basement, but they're paying you $20,000 each? When we reached the bottom, the doors slid open, and the first thing that I saw was a man and a woman sitting at a plastic work table in the middle of a large room. Other than that, it looked like a standard basement with equipment like boilers and hot water heaters and exposed wiring and concrete floors. Welcome, said the woman. Stephen and Jason, is that right? That's us, said Steve, stepping off the elevator. I followed behind and watched as the woman wrote something on her clipboard. That's fantastic, said the man. Right on time. Well, a few minutes late, but that's okay. He laughed. It happens, said the woman, smiling. People have things to do, and we respect that here. That's why we're going to get right down to business, or nearly so. First, we need you to sign the contract. The woman held out 2 clipboards, and we each took one. Before I looked at it, I took a moment to note that my unease had not subsided, despite the surface friendliness of the man and the woman. Somehow that made it more bizarre, that they were just sitting there, so poised amongst the plumbing pipes running overhead, ready to offer us a lot of money to play a video game. Where do we play the game? I asked, looking around. I didn't see a TV or anything. Up here, said the man, tapping his head. I started, but Steve gave me a nudge. They'll tell us what to do, he said. Just sign the contract, dude. He scrawled some information into a few boxes and dashed off a signature while I read more closely. The participant agrees not to seek compensation beyond the predetermined amount. In this case, the predetermined amount is 20,000 USD for participating in one trial game of Total Control, TC. The makers of TC and the administrators of the trial hereby relieve themselves of all liability for any injuries sustained during gameplay, with the express agreement of the participant. Injuries? I asked. What kind of game is this? The woman smiled. Unfortunately, we're not allowed to tell you anything about the game until you sign the contract. After that, you'll know all about it. In the event that the participant is unable to collect the predetermined amount at the end of the game, the makers of TC will transfer the funds to a person of the participant's choosing. The following box is for the participant to note the name and address of the next of kin. So you're saying that if we die, you'll give the money to somebody that we choose? I asked. Is that right? That's right, said the man. If we die while playing your game, I stressed. I turned to Steve. This is nuts. Steve shrugged. It's a lot of money, dude. Take it or leave it. I'm taking it. I tried to convince myself to leave it, but then I thought about going to Europe with Sophia. I wrote her name in the next of kin box and then signed the form. I handed the clipboard back to the woman, who scanned it over. Fantastic, she said. Now will you tell us what this game is? I asked. We'll do better than that, said the man. He reached down into a cardboard box on the ground and pulled out what looked to be 2 headsets. We'll show you the game. Please, gentlemen, put these devices on your heads and prepare for an experience unlike any other. Or so we hope, he added, laughing. Steve didn't hesitate to put the thing on his head. It looked like the front half of a helmet with an elastic band securing it in place and a pair of glasses attached to the helmet. I don't see anything, said Steve. It's a 2-player game, said the man, nodding to me. I took a deep breath. It's just a fucking game. I put the headset on and looked through the glasses. Everything looked the same, except it had a slight yellow tint. I watched as the man reached into the box again and brought out 2 video game controllers. He handed one to the woman, and then they each pushed a button. I heard Steve scream a split second before I heard the hiss of some hydraulic mechanism being engaged just above my ear. Then I felt the most intense pain in my life. It felt like something was being jabbed directly into my fucking brain. And that's exactly what was happening. A trickle of blood rolled down the side of my head as my brain lit up with pain. Then I was out of it. When I woke up, I was strapped to a chair sitting opposite the man and woman behind their table and next to Steve. There was only a dull ache in my head now, but it didn't take long for me to burst into a full-on panic. "Ah, good," said the woman. "You're both awake." She stood up calmly, walked over, and undid my straps. "What is this?" I gasped. "What the fuck is this?" "It's an experiment," said the man. "Don't worry, we've ironed out some kinks since the last time we tried it." "What experiment?" I asked, standing up on wobbly legs. "What are you going to do to us?" The woman went to work unstrapping Steve. "We've implanted a device in your head," she explained. "It allows us to control your physical movements. Or so we hope." Steve rubbed his head. "What the fuck? You're going to pay us, right?" "Of course," said the man. He reached into his cardboard box and pulled out 2 thick envelopes. "I hope cash is okay." He tossed them across the table to our feet. Steve bent down and tore his open. I saw the cash inside. "Okay," he said. "That's worth it for a little headache, I guess." "All right, so you've implanted these devices in our brains. Okay, so can we leave now?" "You can try," said the man, "but you won't be able to if we don't want you to," said the woman. "And we don't want you to," said the man. "Not until you fight to the death," said the woman. I jumped to my feet and tried to slow down my breathing. "Come on, man," I said to Steve. "That's enough of this." I bent down to pick up my envelope and then started walking towards the elevator. "Thanks for the money, guys," said Steve. Then he followed behind me and pushed the button. The light came on, and we waited for the elevator to come. Then I reached my fist back and swung it as hard as I could at Steve's jaw. It connected with a loud crack, and I saw a spray of blood leave his mouth. "Whew, fuck," groaned Steve, rubbing his jaw. I felt dizzy. What the fuck indeed? Why had I just socked my best friend in the face for no reason? Dude, I'm so sorry. I have no idea why I did that. Steve spit out some blood on the basement floor. Forget it. Let's just get the fuck out of here. The elevator door dinged. Sounds good to me, I said as the door slid open. I went to step in when suddenly I felt a hand grab my shoulder and roughly spin me around. It was Steve. He had a confused look on his face as he grabbed my neck with both hands and started to choke me. My nerves exploded in panic as I struggled to breathe. I felt myself bring my knee up into Steve's balls. He let go of my neck then and hunched over. "What's happening?" he gasped. I brought my elbow down on his back and he screamed out in pain. "I don't know," I said. "I don't know." I looked over at the man and the women still seated behind their plastic work table. They were each holding their game controllers and smiling. What the fuck is happening? The woman pushed a button and suddenly Steve lunged at me, driving his shoulder into my gut. We hit the ground together, my elbow taking the brunt of the impact. "I'm so sorry," cried Steve. "I can't stop it." I reached up and grabbed Steve's face in my hand. I didn't want to. I tried to make myself stop, but I couldn't. I began squeezing between my thumb and middle finger, which were spread out and gripped into the spot behind his eye sockets. "Stop this," I shouted. Steve sunk into my palm with his teeth and tore a chunk of my flesh off. I felt a searing pain and a deep fear as he spit my skin onto the ground. I tried to will myself to stay still, but I couldn't. I punched him in the eye. When his head jerked back from the blow, I pushed against his chest and twisted around, so that now I was on top of him. I took a clump of his hair in my hand and began smashing his head against the concrete floor, again and again and again. I was crying. I was begging myself to stop. I was begging the man and the woman to stop whatever they were doing. I was begging Steve to forgive me as his head hit the floor with a thunk that sounded wetter and wetter each time as blood gushed and sprayed everywhere. "Okay," said the man after a while. "That's enough. My player is dead now." I heard the woman laugh. "I told you I would win." Suddenly I was in control of my own movements again. I set Steve's head gently on the ground and knelt next to him, sobbing. "What have I done?" I wailed. "What did you make me do?" Now, said the man, standing up. "It's not all bad news." He walked over and picked up the envelope of cash that Steve had dropped. "He did name you as his next of kin, so you've just made $40,000. I looked up at him with blurry eyes. "You fucking monsters," I said, standing up. "I'll fucking kill you." I ran at him full of rage, with my arms outstretched. But when I got to him, I slowed down, spread my arms wider, and embraced him in a friendly hug. My mind screamed in terror and rage, but my body wouldn't respond. "We control you now," said the woman. "We're happy to let it go at this. You've served our purpose as a beta tester. We'll let you get in that elevator with your money, and you'll never hear from us again if you honor your contract. Do you remember your contract? There's a copy of it in your back pocket. There's one bit that you should pay careful attention to. The bit about how you are never to tell anyone anything close to what happened here. Don't worry about coming up with an explanation for your friend. We'll take care of that. All that you have to do about this all is literally nothing. Don't say a word. You're probably best forgetting it ever happened." "There's a hose in the corner," said the man. "Clean yourself up, take your money, and leave." I did that. I just wasn't sure if I was the one doing it. After I killed Steve, my life fell apart. Of course it did. I knew that I wasn't in control of my actions at the time, but that didn't help at all. I'd watched the life leave his eyes, and I'd gone on smashing his head against the concrete again and again, well after he was dead. I had nightmares about it every night, and the worst part was that I couldn't tell anybody about it. What was I supposed to do? Turn myself in to the police? For murdering my best friend literally against my will? How would that help anything? I wanted to tell Sophia. I wanted to tell her so badly, but I couldn't. Those people had put the fear in me. We started doing fancy things together with the money, like going out to eat, but it was no good. It was like a part of me had died when Steve had died, when I had bashed the life out of him. Sophia didn't want fancy dinners and all of the things that money can buy. She wanted me, but I wasn't there anymore. I started drinking more and more. I considered suicide, not seriously at first, but as time went by, it seemed more and more like a viable option. Anything to stop the never-ending guilt and grief. For her part, Sophia stuck with me for longer than could have been hoped for. But finally it got to be too much. It was clear enough that things were over well before the night we lay in bed together after yet another failed attempt at making love. "I can't do this anymore, Jay," she said. "I love you, but something changed after Steve's accident. I know that he was your best friend, and it tore your heart out. But what about life? What about me? You didn't die. I didn't die. We're still here. And I can't do it anymore. It's been 3 months and I don't think I've heard you laugh once. I'm not blaming you, and I can't tell you how much I wanted to be able to do this. It's my failure, really, but like I said, we're still alive and I want to live while I can, and I want you to live too." I clenched my jaw, trying to fight back the tears. I tried to think rationally. If you really love her, you'll tell her to fuck off. But I didn't. "I have to tell you something," I said. Then, as my soul screamed in horror, I smothered her with a pillow. "I've been in bed with Sophia's dead body for 2 days now. Yesterday I got a text. We have gathered all the data we need. Your contract has been fulfilled. Your unit has been deactivated. We thank you for your participation and wish you the best of luck. I don't know what to do. I'll start here by typing this out. My name is Jay, and I killed my best friend and the love of my life, but I wasn't in control of my body at the time. Where do I go from here?" I warn dark web targets. My name is Jay. Not that you would know if I was telling the truth or not, but you can call me Jay. I work as a chef for rich people. Essentially, they pick out the meals they want and I go shopping, prepare the dishes, freeze them, and deliver them to their homes. That's my main gig. Pays pretty well and I don't even have to find my own customers. It's all word of mouth. They recommend me to their friends and I get new clients until I'm at capacity. The point when I turn away new clients is lower than it could be, because I have a side gig. A side gig that I see as beneficial to society, so even though it pays less than taking on more clients, I make time for both. It's a type of community service. I'm really only working as a chef 4 days a week. I can shop, prep, cook, freeze, and deliver meals for enough clients to get by every month in the span of 4 days. The rest of the time, I'm either traveling for my side gig or taking time off. All right, enough suspense and drum rolling. I'll tell you what my side gig is, though you should already know from the title. I warn people that they are dark web hit targets. Most of those dark web hitmen for hire are scams. Everyone knows that. But I don't have to spend the time figuring out which are real and which are fraud. Someone else, my employer, does that for me. Whenever they have someone who is in need of saving, they get a signal to me through a previously decided code and method, which I'm not planning to reveal publicly. From that, I can deduce who they are and where they live. The rest is up to me. It's funny, when this first started, I thought none of the threats were real. I thought they were paying me to go and scare some folks into believing they were being hunted by a hitman for hire. I wasn't sure of the motive, but that's what I first thought. That was until I literally ran into the hitman on his way to the target's house. But that's a story for another time. That's not the tale I came here to tell. So, down to the real meat and bones here. I got a message with the name and address of a target. I was checking for a message after delivering my last batch of meals for the week. My employer has impeccable timing. The target lived a couple hours away, across state lines. I jotted down the address in a notepad in a coded language that looks like a grocery list. The code is in case I ever get stopped by the cops. I don't want them finding an address of a murder victim on me if I can't save the target. I grabbed my go bag full of road trip supplies and headed out. During pit stops to gas up, I tried looking them up on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else. This guy was married with 2 little girls and a wife who, let's be honest, was past her prime. Yeah, I know I'm a prick. He was on the chubby side, and it looked like he worked in construction from his bio. He had lots of friends from the community and lots of social photos of him at bars with a bunch of dudes. Very social. Here's the thing about dark web targets. They never scream, "I'm neck deep in the underworld and someone is mad enough to get me killed." They always look normal. I can't look at a target and know what it is they did. Hell, even after I warn them, I don't find out most of the time. Sometimes a target's name will show up with an arrest record online for dealing drugs or other criminal activities, which is why I keep tabs on targets in the future. But sometimes my curiosity just isn't satiated. But because I don't throw a fit, ask questions, or miss my objectives, my employer keeps hiring me. I'm a professional, or I thought I was, until this target. It took me a few hours, but once I arrived on the street, I shot my employer a brief message to update them. It was dusk by then, which was fine by me. Hiding out in my car in the dark was preferable to the middle of the day when people would be looking outside. As is my usual procedure, I parked several houses away to observe, in front of an empty lot. The house was a 2-story building in a nice neighborhood with a fenced-in backyard, rose bushes in the front, and green lawn. The typical 1950s American dream. Construction must pay well. You can guess that my job is delicate. Delicate to the point that it has to be discreet and secretive. I can't just go knock on the front door, tell them their life is in danger, and then walk away. Believe me, I've tried that once, and only once. I have to do some recon, decide the best way to not only inform the target but convince them that they are a target. It's the most essential part of the gig. Like I said, I'm a professional, and I have to make them believe that. From my go bag, I produced a small tube with a wire protruding out of it. I set that on the dashboard and pointed it at the target's home. The other end of the wire was a USB, and I stuck that into a laptop. The tube contained a signal amplifier, which basically lets me turn their weak Wi-Fi signal into one I can use from a distance. It's the first thing I try because if I can get into their Wi-Fi, I can learn a lot about them before I engage. I opened a couple programs on my laptop that were written to brute force their way into common Wi-Fi signals. Most households aren't savvy enough to change their router's default settings, and those that are often don't check the more advanced settings like weak signal encryption. Their Wi-Fi password was their last name with 1234 added at the end. Once I was allowed into the Wi-Fi network, another program checked the router for default login credentials. They never changed that password, so I was in control of their router in a measly 3 minutes. It wasn't a record for the types of intrusions I've done, but it was still fast. I was relieved that I could get control of the network. That makes the recon 1,000 times easier. With yet another program, these are all free and widely available, by the way. I'm not paying anyone for this shit. I put my computer between all the other devices on the network and the router. Every device would now send all requests to my laptop, since they thought my laptop was the router. My laptop would then trick the devices into thinking I was the website they were trying to connect to. Since they thought I was that website, they would hand me the keys to decrypt what they were sending. I would then read the contents and forward their request to the real server and just show them the results. In essence, I was hiding in the back room of their digital post office, opening envelopes to read the contents and then resealing before sending it off to its destination. Encryption is no match for a man-in-the-middle attack. It was really delicate to set this up the first time, but once I had it running, it was easy to deploy again for new networks. like this one. Oven and a truck were in the driveway. Everyone was home for the night. The internet traffic was heavy because they were all home and using the internet. They would notice the slowdown at some point and potentially restart their router, booting me out of the network. I was vulnerable just sitting outside their house, so I had to hope I could collect what I needed before someone wondered what I was doing. For almost 2 hours, I collected their internet traffic. It was well past sunset, dark outside, and late in the evening when I saw a police car casually cruise by. I froze when they passed. My laptop screen was on. They would have seen the light in my car. I was parked in front of an empty lot and far enough from the target house to not be noticed, I thought. But maybe another neighbor had said something. I didn't want to risk being followed and pulled over by leaving just as the cop goes by. Instead, from my glove box, I pulled out a clipboard and rearranged the parts of my cover. Luckily, the police car rounded a corner and disappeared from view. On my screen, a device in the house went to a domain I had set to alert me on. It was a porn site, and one of the seedier ones to boot. I have it set up to alert me of seedy websites that get visited. Sitting up straighter, I paid attention to the traffic going through that site, and noticed something interesting. The device wasn't watching anything. Instead, they had signed in and began doing something else, uploading. I was looking at the screen, porn site open, trying to make sure I was capturing what was getting uploaded. I was so focused that I didn't see the officer approach my car door. I visibly jumped when the police officer knocked on my window. I hit a hotkey on reflex that hid what was on my screen, but I knew he'd seen what I had up. He would have seen the porn site. He had probably been sitting there for a few seconds, just checking what I was doing. I was caught, and it didn't look good. I rolled my window down partially. "Hello, officer," I greeted, keeping my voice steady despite my beating heart. Fuck. "What you doing out here?" the officer asked, turning on a flashlight and pointing it into the car. He eyed my setup with interest. "I'm logging cloud data," I answered. "Gloomy night and all." "Cloud data?" he asked, confused. "Oh yes, I'm a contractor with the National Weather Service, out with an infrared cloud density depicker to measure local cloud composition." I shit-talked my way through a pseudo-technical explanation, pointing to the signal amplifier on my dashboard. I presented my work badge with a phony company I had built specially for a cover like this. My shirt had a name tag with the same cover on it. The officer listened, and when I stopped explaining, he considered it all. "Then why were you watching porn when I walked up?" he grilled. My embarrassed expression wasn't fake, but it helped sell the story. I painted myself as an employee stuck out pulling long hours with nothing to do but watch weather data roll in. What else was an employee supposed to do to pass the time? It was a gamble. He could try arresting me on public indecency or something, and then he'd find my real wallet in my pocket. My name would be in a police database somewhere, which was really not ideal. "Listen, I know you're working here, but pick a different street that isn't residential to take your measurements. And don't watch that shit in public," the officer Chastity said. Again, my embarrassment wasn't an act. With that, he let me go. Relief bloomed across my face. I'd talked my way out, which had been a gamble. I did notice, watching the officer get back in his car through my mirror, that he paused to glance at the target's house on his way back to his car. Interesting, the police were watching the house. But why? Did they know the types of shit he was into that had brought me here? Maybe my job wasn't necessary and the police would nab him before a hitman had the chance. If he was doing criminal shit and the police had caught on to it, I could see how he could make an enemy that wanted him dead before he could squeal on them. But if the police weren't going to raid tonight, the hitman might still have time. Whether or not they decided to risk it with police checking the house was up to them. I packed up my stuff, disconnected from their network, and drove away to cross town. In a Walmart parking lot, I settled in. In my browser, I tuned into the local police radio. Yeah, they just broadcast that shit. I wanted to hear if a raid was starting so I could stay informed on my target. With that running in the background, I sifted through the traffic I had collected. The guy had logged into his Facebook account, and with my man-in-the-middle attack, I had captured his credentials. I checked there first. It always gave good background information. It was in his messages that I found a conversation with that exact officer. His wife was trying to take the kids, he claimed. He said she might try to run in the middle of the night and asked the officer to patrol his neighborhood and give a strong police presence to scare her into staying and not kidnapping the kids. What the fuck? This guy was a regular abuser. It was apparent. But the officer had been a buddy in high school, and they regularly got beers with several other members of the community, including police, so they covered each other's backs. Even if the officer didn't know everything, he had to know there was abuse, right? It was obvious to me. After checking his Facebook, I went back to the porn city he'd visited. My man-in-the-middle attack had picked up those credentials too, so I could log in as this guy and investigate. With a virtual machine running Tor, I logged into the site with the sniffed credentials. Since he had been uploading, I went to his account and checked his uploads. My stomach caught in my throat. Well over 70 uploaded videos. The titles ranged across several themes, mainly involving sexual assault. The videos were marked as private, and I now understand that this porn site was doing something under the table with those videos, selling them off to even seedier sites that could afford to be shut down by police, while the main site operated above board. From a single thumbnail, I knew. His wife, and one of his kids. He was filming it, and selling it. My mouth soured. It became obvious to me that I wasn't going to, in good conscience, give this guy a heads up about the hitman. Not a chance. While considering my options, I kept perusing the data. His wife had been using the internet as well. As it turned out, she was a little technically savvy. I know that because she started running Tor while I talked to the officer. She used it for a simple, small message on a board that supplied me with a lot of my targets. It was an address, sent to another member on the board. The entire puzzle clicked into place, and I found myself rooting for the bad guy. She'd be caught, of course. I could see a few mistakes where the police would find out it was her and arrest her, but there wasn't anything I could do. I could warn her of her mistakes, but then she would be back to square one. It was a type of trolley problem. Do you pull the lever to continue the abuse of this woman and her kids? Or do you leave the lever alone and let her ruin her own life by getting arrested and sending kids off to CPS while the piece of shit target gets what's coming to him? In the end, I left the lever alone. And from the news, I was right. He died. She was arrested. His side income was discovered. The kids went into the system. They were safe from him, at least. That's the only comfort I can give myself. It was an impossible situation, is what I tell myself. But now that it's past, I see the things I could and should have done. I could have brought down the FBI on this little Midwestern house. But in the thick of it all, I didn't see that option. It just felt impossible. I still lose sleep over the decision, but it's made. I assumed that my employer didn't know why this guy was being targeted, just that he was a target. I was hired to blindly stop any and all murders from dark web hired hitmen. There's no way they could know the details of every hitman transaction, right? Right? I love weird websites. None of that deep web torture stuff or anything like that. After having a friend accidentally stumble upon a gore clip while exploring on Tor, I've learned to stay well away. But you'd be surprised at how many truly interesting sites there are out there. Boardbutton.com was where I found my start. It gives you a nice little sample of unusual web toys, and as I'm sure some of you know, you can easily get captivated for an hour or two just playing around with it. My curiosity grew from there, and I found myself browsing every corner of the internet for sites, videos, and projects that managed to fall into that certain niche of obscurity home to the most interesting of oddities. Surprisingly, I haven't found much fucked up stuff yet. Occasionally I'll uncover some twisted ideas, some gore art or animation, some unsettling plans or details I could have done without. But the vast majority of the stuff I find is cheerful, happy, and entirely fun. A subreddit, the name of which I refuse to share, showed up one day as I was searching for random words and phrases across Reddit. It was very neutral, yet customized to some degree, with a calming blue background and a sidebar image of a lake looking out on a tropical-seeming forest, with a mountain in the distance behind it. Each page of it that I explored was cluttered with computerized garble, mishmashed letters, numbers, and bugged or uncommonly used text symbols. The occasional emoji reared its ugly head among the rest. Occasionally, this letter stew would break up into a jumble of random phrases, likely snipped from other areas of the web. I breathed a sigh of success upon realizing there were no threads asking for clarification. I had been the first to find this oddity. But then, I noticed something interesting about the thread names. After finding nearly every startup oddity website and college student art project that interested me, I turned my attention to more mainstream sites, particularly those with blogging or social media aspects. You can find a surprising amount of weird Facebook pages, Tumblr blogs, YouTube channels, and subreddits. The final category among those was where I managed to come across my most interesting, yet somehow unsettling, find to date. Each thread name was fairly short and consisted of letters either in English or various other languages I recognized, peppered throughout the word slurry. I copied these characters into various tabs of Google Translate and assembled the translations into a completed sentence. Sector 15, finally some headway. In a further attempt to unravel this mysterious and incredibly intriguing subreddit, I tried this with another thread name. Same results, a sector denoted numerically. Slightly lower, as I had chosen one from lower on the page. I decided to check if anyone else was online. I was the only one, as I had expected, but then I noticed that there was somebody subscribed already. I subscribed myself and refreshed the page. My stomach panged. A message was pinned that wasn't before, right there at the top of the pile of threads. Even stranger, it was in coherent English and read just, product. I clicked on it. It seemed to take me to a different website, but repeated scans of the URL reassured me that it was still Reddit. The format was drastically different, like that of a sleek corporate homepage. I could make out some faint text against the soothing teal background, slightly lighter than the background itself. More computerized mumbo-jumbo, but this time tipped with 2 words. Activation imminent. A pair of obviously computer-rendered lips filled the screen, which had now turned a paler blue. They rose and fell in vague sync with the words they spoke, which were in Polish or some other European language. My gaze fell in disappointment as I couldn't understand what was being spoken, and as if in response, the language shifted to an obviously synthesized, yet understandable, female voice speaking English. I would love to tell you how it phrased what it said to me, but try as I might, I can't remember any exacts after that point. Instead, I feel imbued with some sort of vague understanding of what it said. It spoke eloquently, almost melodically, in a way that seemed to fill a hole in my being I had never heard of nor felt before. It spoke of the truths of life, of happiness and sorrow, of wisdom and guidance. It assured me that from that point on in my life, I would never be unguided in my actions. Perhaps there's some weight to that. Ever since, I've been noticing changes in my behavior, sort of like spasms that I can't fully control. I'll lose any feeling of motion or action for a couple minutes at a time, just sort of watching what this outer version of myself does. Then we merge again, and I feel normal. It's quite dreamlike, really. But here's why I'm so unsettled. These episodes of lucid helplessness have been becoming more frequent, and I feel a crushing rift forming between 2 parts of me. My soul and my body are growing uncomfortable with each other and are beginning to separate. And as this rift grows, I notice flaws in the world and in the structure of matter. Sure, there are little inconsistencies, but I can't scrap the feeling that they're building up to something. I'm certain my body will take over quite shortly, so I bid you all adieu.